He's mentally ill, my wife screamed across the courtroom, her voice shaking with a mixture of fear and fake innocence. But the judge didn't look at me. He looked straight at her and asked calmly, "Do you know?" I'll never forget the silence that followed. Silence thick enough to choke someone. 3 months earlier, I was a loyal husband, a quiet man, a predictable man, the type who believed marriage meant honesty and partnership. Then I found the messages. Not just messages, plans, dreams, new lives being built between my wife and the man she swore meant nothing. A full-year-long affair, wrapped in lies so beautiful they could almost be art. When I confronted her, she didn't apologize. She didn't cry. She didn't even look guilty. She looked annoyed, as if I had interrupted her life's upgrade. 2 days later, I came home to police sitting in my living room, my wife crying on the couch. She told them I was unstable, paranoid, mentally dangerous. She begged them to take me somewhere safe. They tried, but I knew the law. I said nothing, agreed to nothing, signed nothing. They had no grounds. That was the day I learned the most important lesson of my life. No one destroys you faster than a person who wants to justify betraying you. But I wasn't going to break. I was going to win. So I gathered evidence. Everything: screenshots, bank records, trackable dates and times, audio recordings. Every lie she told became a brick in the wall she would crash into. She wanted a divorce. Fine, I wanted justice. She dragged me into court first, claiming I was mentally unstable, aggressive, and emotionally abusive. Her attempt to win the house, the money, and sympathy. Her lawyer smirked at me. She smirked too. Everyone expected me to collapse. Then the judge read the file I submitted, evidence so detailed it could ruin entire reputations. That was when the judge looked at her and asked, "Do you know that falsely claiming mental illness is a criminal offense? Do you know that filing fabricated allegations to manipulate divorce proceedings is punishable by law? Do you know that your husband has provided enough proof of your infidelity, financial misconduct, and defamation to overturn this entire case?" Her face went white. Her lawyer went silent. The courtroom doors might as well have locked themselves behind her. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The judge did it for me. He dismissed her claims. He granted me majority of the assets. He ordered her to pay fees. And he warned her publicly that if she continued lying, she'd face charges. She didn't scream anymore. She didn't smirk anymore. 3 months later, she and her soulmate were living in a tiny apartment, drowning in debt, fighting every week, their fantasy life collapsing under real-world pressure. And then it happened. A knock on my door, rain pouring behind them, 2 figures shivering, my ex-wife, and the man she left me for, both begging for help, begging for money, begging for forgiveness, begging for me to be the bigger person. But I wasn't that man anymore. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult them. I didn't remind them of what they did. I simply closed the door, let them drown in the storm they created. Because revenge, it isn't about violence. It isn't about shouting. It isn't even about winning. It's about walking away untouched, while the people who tried to break you collapse under the weight of their own choices. And that's exactly what I did. He didn't fight back the way most people expected. That was the first thing that made his wife uneasy. After she called the police on him with false claims and tried to twist reality into her weapon, he didn't shout, didn't defend himself with chaos, didn't beg them to believe him. He simply watched, quietly absorbing every detail, every word she used, every lie she repeated, every dramatic gesture she rehearsed. And while the officers eventually left without taking action, she walked around afterward with the careless confidence of someone who believed she had established control. She thought she had written the narrative, poor wife trapped with an unstable man. But she never realized that her performance gave him everything he needed: direction, motive, and absolute clarity. He began gathering evidence not out of anger, but out of a cold, strategic patience that frightened even him. He stopped trying to save the marriage the moment he read her messages months before, where she described him as boring, predictable, and easy to manipulate. Those words didn't break him, they sharpened him. He realized how deeply she underestimated him, and that was exactly what he planned to use. Every night, while she thought he was asleep, he worked quietly. He sifted through phone records, screenshots, bank transfers, and emails. He tracked the nights she claimed to be working late, comparing them with hotel receipts and the location data he pulled from their shared account, before she remembered to turn it off. He even compiled audio recordings, not illegal ones, but simple, everyday conversations. Moments where she admitted her affair indirectly. Moments where she showed disdain, where she joked about his mental state to her lover, unaware her voice was being captured through the smart home system she insisted on installing. Her betrayal was an avalanche of arrogance, and every detail she ignored became a piece of evidence he collected with surgical precision. But the most powerful evidence wasn't digital. It was behavioral. It was the way she bragged to her friends about finally getting rid of him soon, believing she would use the court system like a personal stage. It was the way she practiced fake crying in the shower, thinking he couldn't hear. It was the way she casually mentioned that men like him never win anything. A sentence he wrote down in his notes, not because it hurt, but because it revealed her fatal flaw. She believed the quiet ones stay quiet forever. During those months, he treated her with such calmness that she mistook it for defeat. She thought he was giving up. She thought she had broken him down emotionally until he was nothing more than a shadow following her around. She confided in her lover that she couldn't wait for the judge to see how unstable he is, laughing about how easy it would be to play innocent. Little did she know that he already had copies of those messages printed, signed by timestamps, sealed in chronological order, prepared to be submitted legally. He didn't skip steps. He consulted professionals discreetly to ensure every piece of evidence was admissible. He studied divorce laws late into the night. He researched defamation, false allegations, and financial misconduct. He wasn't preparing for revenge, he was preparing for justice, the kind that doesn't require yelling, chaos, or violence. The kind that crushes a person slowly under the weight of their own lies. His wife never once suspected him. The beauty of her arrogance was that it blinded her to danger. She saw him as a harmless, emotionally fragile husband who would crumble the moment things escalated. She believed her affair partner would step in like a hero during the divorce, that she'd walk out with the house, the money, and a shiny new life. But he saw everything. He anticipated everything. When she filed the divorce papers first, filled with exaggerated claims of emotional instability, he remained silent. He let her believe she had the advantage. He wanted her confidence inflated, her lies stacked high enough to collapse completely when confronted with truth. For every false statement she wrote, he had evidence disproving it. For every accusation, he had a witness or documentation refuting it. For every tear she rehearsed, he had a message where she admitted she had no intention of staying with him. There were nights he felt the sting of betrayal, nights his hands shook while scrolling through the evidence of her affair. But he never allowed rage to consume him. He let discipline take its place. His revenge was not emotional, it was methodical, calculated, and inevitable. By the time the court date arrived, he was ready in a way she couldn't possibly imagine. She walked into that courtroom armed with lies and theatrics. He walked in with truth organized in a binder, so thorough even the judge raised an eyebrow. And when her performance began, her voice trembling dramatically, her eyes glistening on cue, he remained still, watching, waiting for the exact moment to let the judge see the reality she had tried so hard to hide. She had spent months crafting a fictional version of him, but she had forgotten one simple truth. The quietest person in the room is often the one building the strongest case. And by the time she realized it, everything she thought she controlled was already collapsing. When the day of the hearing arrived, the courtroom carried the cold, heavy stillness of a storm about to break. His wife strutted in first, wrapped in a carefully chosen outfit meant to evoke fragility, soft colors, trembling hands, a slight wobble in her step. Her lawyer hovered protectively beside her, like a seasoned actor preparing his lead performer. She was ready to deliver her masterpiece, the heartbroken, mistreated wife seeking salvation from a mentally unstable husband. She believed the judge would swallow every word whole. He entered quietly, without theatrics, without even glancing in her direction. That alone rattled her. For months, she had expected him to fight, to beg, to break down. Instead, he carried himself with a calm so controlled it became its own kind of threat. He didn't look like a madman. He didn't act like a paranoid husband. He looked like someone who knew exactly what was about to happen. And that terrified her. The proceedings started with her lawyer rising confidently, opening the file filled with her accusations. The man spoke with heavy dramatization, describing the husband as unstable, unpredictable, volatile. Every word sharpened like a blade. Each time the lawyer said, "mentally unwell," she sniffled loudly, dabbing at her eyes as if she were wiping away tears of fear instead of lies. She even avoided eye contact with him, as though she was truly frightened. Her performance was flawless. But the truth has a way of bending the air around it, shifting everything it touches. When the judge turned to him for his response, he didn't launch into emotional defenses or counterattacks. He simply reached for a binder, neatly labeled, organized by dates, times, and supporting documents. The judge raised an eyebrow, already sensing something wasn't aligning with the wife's dramatic narrative. He handed over the binder without a word. The judge opened the first page, then the second, then the third. Silence thickened. The judge's expression slowly shifted from neutrality to sharp concentration. Evidence was clearly contradicting every piece of fiction the wife had just displayed. Screenshots, location logs, bank statements, recordings transcribed, timelines showing her affair, messages where she mocked the very accusations she had filed. A complete map of her deceit, printed in black and white. Her lawyer noticed the judge's shifting posture. Her wife noticed the faint change in the room's air. Then the judge spoke. "Or Mrs. Carson." He began, his tone stern. "Before we proceed further, I have a question." Her breath caught. "Yes, Your Honor." His voice was calm, but edged with unmistakable authority. "Do you know that filing false claims regarding someone's mental health is a serious offense? Do you understand that the evidence provided by your husband not only disproves your allegations, but indicates intentional manipulation of the legal system?" All color drained from her face. Her lawyer leaned toward her, whispering urgently, his earlier confidence evaporating. She stuttered, unable to find even a rehearsed line to fall back on. The judge continued, flipping through the binder with deliberate precision. "These messages," he said, tapping the pages, "clearly show your awareness of the affair, your intent to provoke a reaction, and your discussion about using the accusation of mental instability to gain advantage in this divorce." Each word struck her harder than the last. The courtroom had turned into a mirror, reflecting her lies back at her, and the more she stared, the more her expression cracked. She tried to speak, but her voice trailed off into empty air. Her carefully crafted persona, the fragile victim she had practiced becoming, began to fall apart piece by piece. For the first time, she looked at him not with anger, not with superiority, but with a dawning fear of a man she had never truly known. She had expected weakness. She found preparedness. She had expected chaos. She found clarity. She had expected a breakdown. Instead, she was the one unraveling. The judge didn't stop there. He addressed the courtroom, stating that the husband's evidence was thorough, compelling, and documented with a level of detail that demonstrated responsibility rather than instability. He praised the husband's calm approach, his respect for the legal process, and his restraint in the face of serious accusations. Then he turned to her again. "Mrs. Carson, given the circumstances, the court finds your claims unfounded and intentionally fabricated." Her lips trembled. Her hands shook. She looked toward her lawyer for rescue, but he could only lower his eyes, silently admitting defeat. Every manipulative script she had prepared crumbled into dust. The judge dismissed her accusations entirely. He granted the husband the majority of marital assets. He ordered her to pay legal fees. And in one final blow, he warned her that pursuing further false allegations could lead to criminal charges. The courtroom felt like it was holding its breath. She had walked in believing she had the upper hand, expecting sympathy, expecting victory. But by the time the judge finished speaking, she realized she had stepped into a battle she had already lost months before, when she underestimated the man she betrayed. The husband didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply nodded, calm and unreadable. His silence was louder than any victory speech, and she learned, painfully and publicly, that lies may begin loudly, but truth always finishes the conversation. The moment the judge dismissed her accusations and turned the tables, reality hit her harder than anything she had expected. She had walked into that courtroom certain that she could shape the narrative, believing her lies were airtight, believing her performance was strong enough to blind everyone. But once the truth was laid bare, she felt her entire carefully crafted world slipping through her fingers. She tried to compose herself, tried to regain even a fraction of the control she thought she possessed, but it was too late. The courtroom no longer saw a victim, they saw a manipulator, a liar, someone who had attempted to abuse the justice system to destroy an innocent man. The judge didn't just dismiss her claims, he dismantled them. Piece by piece, he made it clear that she had crossed a legal line she never should have approached. Every lie she had written in the divorce petition, every fabricated story she rehearsed for months, every fake tear she had planned, all of it was now evidence against her. Her lawyer, who had once been so smug, now looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. He rarely interrupted the judge, and when he did, it was only to try to soften the blow, to suggest misunderstanding or emotional distress. But even he knew the argument was weak. The judge reviewed the financial misconduct next. The husband had provided detailed statements of how she had secretly withdrawn money from shared accounts, transferring small sums to maintain secrecy. She thought she was being clever, that she was hiding her steps well enough. But she never imagined he would quietly track every transaction, every hidden payment, every subtle trail she left behind. The judge noted her attempts at deception, emphasizing how she had clearly taken advantage of her husband's trust in an effort to fund a life outside the marriage. Each revelation pushed her deeper into humiliation. Her face flushed red with embarrassment. Her eyes darted around the room as if searching for an escape route. She expected her affair partner to be present, to support her, to witness her victory. But he didn't show up. Not that day, not ever. He had disappeared the moment she said she needed him to testify. He had enough sense to know he wanted no part of a legal disaster, so he left her to handle the mess alone. She realized then that she was utterly on her own. The judge made his ruling without hesitation. The husband was awarded the majority of the assets, including the house she had once boasted she would win. Her lawyer attempted to protest, but the judge quickly overruled him. The reasoning was simple: the husband had maintained transparency, while the wife had consistently lied, manipulated, and concealed. Courts respond strongly to dishonesty, especially when it involves fabricated accusations that could have destroyed someone's reputation and mental health. Then came the moment that truly broke her. The judge ordered her to pay attorney fees, not just her own, but a significant portion of her ex-husband's. It was a financial blow she didn't expect, one she hadn't prepared for. She gasped audibly when she heard the amount. Her savings were limited, and her lover had already drained whatever money she had funneled into him during the affair. The realization slowly washed over her. She wasn't just losing a battle. She was losing her financial security, her future stability, and the image she had built for herself. And then the final warning. The judge leaned forward slightly, fixing her with a stern, unclouded stare. "Understand this clearly," he said. "Falsifying claims, especially those concerning mental health, can result in criminal charges. If you attempt anything similar moving forward, this court will not hesitate to pursue those consequences." Those words echoed across the room. The weight of them was more devastating than any financial penalty. She suddenly understood that her lies didn't just fail, they put her in real legal danger. She felt exposed, naked, stripped of the weapon she relied on her entire life: manipulation. The husband, however, didn't react with triumph. He didn't smirk, didn't gloat, didn't even look at her with resentment. He simply accepted the ruling with the same calm he carried throughout the entire process. His composure only made her humiliation worse. She had expected rage, maybe an outburst, maybe some pathetic display she could use later. But he gave her nothing. He was unshakable, unbothered, and in control, something she had never seen in him before. It rattled her more than the judge's words. As the courtroom emptied, she remained seated for a moment, staring at the table with trembling hands. Her lawyer whispered something about payment plans and possible appeals, but she wasn't listening. She could barely breathe. Everything she thought she controlled had turned into a weapon against her. He walked past her without a glance. That silence, that calm indifference, was the final blow. She realized she had not only lost the case, she had lost any power she had over him. Her accusations failed. Her lies collapsed. Her affair partner vanished. Her finances were ruined. And the man she tried to destroy walked away untouchable. In that moment, as she watched him leave, she finally understood the truth she had avoided for too long. She had never been fighting a broken man. She had been fighting an intelligent, patient, disciplined man who simply chose not to reveal his strength until it mattered most. 3 months after the courtroom disaster, the perfect fantasy she once believed she was stepping into had completely collapsed. She had imagined a bright new life with her affair partner, a life filled with excitement, romance, freedom, and endless possibilities. But reality is never as glamorous as the lies used to escape into it. At first, she tried to convince herself that the court case didn't matter, that losing the assets, the house, and her reputation was temporary. She told herself that at least she had him, the man she betrayed her marriage for, the man who was supposed to be her upgrade. But reality started cracking on day one. The man she left her husband for was never stable. He thrived in secrecy, in stolen moments, in the thrill of sneaking around. Once the secrecy vanished, so did the excitement. Living together exposed every flaw she once romanticized. He wasn't attentive. He wasn't supportive. He wasn't even reliable. The same man who once sent her long paragraphs now barely responded with one-word answers. The same man who once promised to take care of her now didn't even have enough money to take care of himself. The tiny apartment they rented was cramped, dim, and nothing like the spacious home she had confidently assumed she would win in the divorce. Their arguments began almost immediately, arguments about money, chores, loyalty, the court case, the consequences she had to face. He blamed her for dragging him into a mess he wanted no part of, telling her she was too dramatic, that she caused all her own problems, and that he should never have gotten involved with a married woman. Slowly, she realized something devastating: he never loved her. Not truly. She had been a convenience, a temporary distraction, something fun and forbidden. But she had mistaken lust for loyalty, mistaking stolen affection for real commitment. Money became the first fracture. She owed attorney fees. She owed court-ordered payments. She owed debts that had accumulated while trying to maintain the double life. But she had no house to sell, no savings left, and no partner willing to help her. He told her plainly that he couldn't carry her financially. He barely carried himself. Every week she scrambled to come up with the payments, humiliating herself with part-time jobs far below the lifestyle she once bragged about. Meanwhile, her ex-husband lived comfortably, something she couldn't bear to imagine. Her friends disappeared next. They weren't interested in associating with someone who was publicly exposed as a liar and manipulator. Even the relatives who once supported her quietly distanced themselves, embarrassed by her actions. The isolation grew like a shadow that followed her everywhere. Then came the emotional decline. Sleepless nights, panic, regret. She replayed every moment of the marriage she ruined, wondering how she had been so blind. She remembered the nights her husband cooked dinner, the mornings he left coffee on her bedside table, the way he listened when she spoke, and how steady he always was. And she saw in brutal contrast the man she now lived with, unreliable, moody, uninterested, and emotionally distant. The final crack came when he left. He didn't slam the door or yell. He just packed quietly one morning, stuffing his clothes into a duffel bag while she slept. When she woke up, he was fastening his shoes. "Where are you going?" she asked, panic fluttering in her voice. He didn't even look up. "I can't do this. I thought this would be fun. It's not. You're too much trouble. I'm done." And with that he walked out, no apology, no explanation, no emotion. She sat on the floor for hours, staring at the blank door, feeling a hollow ache swallowing her from the inside out. For the first time, she truly felt the weight of everything she had destroyed. Not just a marriage, but her stability, her security, her identity, her dignity. Weeks passed in loneliness and regret. She tried distracting herself, tried pretending she was okay. But reality became impossible to ignore. Every problem she had created circled back to her like ghosts demanding attention. And every time she thought about how she ended up here, her mind went back to one person, her ex-husband. Not because she loved him now, but because she understood what she lost: a man who was calm, steady, loyal, patient, and someone she had mistaken for weak. The same man she thought she could walk over had left her life without looking back, rising above every lie she used against him. And that realization broke her more than the affair partner leaving. Because deep down, she finally understood she hadn't just lost a marriage. She had lost the only person who ever truly cared for her. 3 months after the ruling, she swallowed her pride and reached out to him. She rehearsed her apology, crafted messages, tried to figure out what angle would make him listen. Eventually, she convinced herself that showing up in person would work better. She arrived at his door in the rain, soaked, shaking, desperate. And she wasn't alone. Her affair partner, now broke and panicked, realized he too needed help. Together they knocked, hoping for mercy, hoping for a shred of compassion, hoping that the man they betrayed was still the soft-hearted fool they once imagined. But when he opened the door, he wasn't the same man she married. He wasn't broken. He wasn't fragile. He wasn't waiting for them. He stood tall, composed, and utterly unaffected. Before she could speak, he offered a simple, emotionless sentence. "There's nothing left for either of you here." And he closed the door. That moment shattered her entirely, because it was the first time she truly understood what justice looked like. Not dramatic, not loud, not cruel, just final. Just absolute, just deserved. When he closed the door that night, he didn't slam it. He didn't shove it with anger or satisfaction. He simply let it fall into place with a quiet finality that echoed louder than any shouted revenge ever could. On the other side of the door stood two people who had once believed they held power over him, people who had lied, betrayed, manipulated, and tried to break him. But their voices, their desperation, their pleas didn't pierce him anymore. They were ghosts of a past he had already buried. The soft click of the lock was the moment he chose peace over chaos, dignity over drama, and self-respect over nostalgia. And that choice was more powerful than anything they expected. He stood there for a moment, hearing the muffled sound of her crying, the frustrated muttering of the man she had destroyed her marriage for. But he felt nothing, not anger, not pity, not triumph, just clarity. This was the closure he didn't even realize he needed. A quiet, steady reminder that he had overcome everything they tried to do to him. He walked away from the door, wiped his hands on his jeans as if brushing off the last particles of their presence, and went back to the calm life he rebuilt after the storm. Outside, she was falling apart. The rain drenched her hair, plastering it to her face as tears mixed with raindrops. She kept knocking lightly, not even with hope anymore, but out of disbelief. Disbelief that the man she had once controlled so easily no longer cared whether she stayed or left. She had counted on him being the same forgiving, soft-spoken husband she had manipulated for years. She assumed she could return, cry a little, and tap into the sympathy she once exploited so effortlessly. But now she stood there shivering, finally realizing she no longer knew him at all. He had grown into someone she couldn't sway, someone she couldn't guilt, someone she couldn't pull back into her chaos. The man she once described as weak was now the strongest person she knew, because he chose to walk away. Her affair partner, who had tagged along in desperation, didn't bother pretending to care about her emotional collapse. His concern was purely selfish. He needed money, a place to stay, someone to fix the mess he helped create. He knocked harder, frustration building as the rain soaked him. But even he knew the truth. They were both standing there because they had run out of people to use. He muttered that he was done with this, and stormed off into the night, leaving her alone in the cold. As she watched him disappear, it hit her again. Everyone she had chosen over her husband had abandoned her. Everyone she trusted had turned their back. And the only person who might have helped her had already closed that chapter of his life. She fell to her knees on the wet pavement, sobbing not just from humiliation, but from understanding. She had gambled her entire life on lies, arrogance, and betrayal, and she had lost everything. Meanwhile, inside his home, he made himself a cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the storm without emotion. He didn't feel victorious. He didn't feel cruel. He felt free. Their return, broken, defeated, begging, only confirmed what he already knew. Walking away had been the greatest act of strength he'd ever taken. Revenge wasn't in slamming the door in their faces. Revenge was in the life he built afterward. A stable, peaceful, balanced life they would never be part of again. Over the next few days, he didn't think about her much. She called a few times, sent long messages apologizing, begging, trying to explain how everything went wrong. He didn't answer any of them. Not to punish her, but because there were no words left worth exchanging. The damage she caused wasn't something an apology could fix. And he realized he didn't owe closure to people who never cared about the destruction they caused. He focused on himself. He started jogging again in the mornings. He signed up for a woodworking class he had always wanted to try. He reconnected with old friends he had drifted away from during his marriage. He slept peacefully for the first time in years. The quiet was no longer suffocating, it was liberating, and while he moved forward, she continued sinking. Word spread about her lies in court. Her reputation crumbled. She struggled financially. The man she left him for ignored her completely. She lived in a tiny apartment she hated, haunted by the memory of the home she once took for granted. Every night she thought about the moment he shut the door, how simple it was, how final it felt. She realized that losing him wasn't just losing a husband. It was losing the life she never knew how to appreciate, and she would carry that regret forever. He didn't celebrate. He didn't check up on her. He didn't need validation. His revenge wasn't in watching her suffer. It was in knowing that he survived everything she put him through and came out stronger. She, meanwhile, would always remember that she created her own downfall. She destroyed the only man who ever truly cared for her, and the universe simply let her feel the consequences of her own actions. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet choice to move on with dignity. Sometimes it's the silence that follows a closed door. And sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply living a life that proves they never had the power to break you.